So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sparta Live webinar series, an online program of lively workshops themed around the history, archaeology, and legacy of ancient Sparta and Laconia, hosted jointly by the Center for Spartan and Peloponnesian Studies of the University of Nottingham and the city of Sparta, the site of ancient Sparta in Greece. I'm Chrysanthi Galou, Associate Professor of Archaeology and Director of the Center, and my co-host this evening is Dr. Matt Thompson, Teaching Associate in Ancient History and the Secretary of the Center at Nottingham. Unfortunately, due to prior arrangements, Mayor Doukas won't be with us today. So a warm welcome to all our attendees, and without further ado, I will pass over to Matt, who will introduce today's distinguished speaker. Matt, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Chrysanthi, and it is a pleasure to be here, and an even greater pleasure to be welcoming Dr. Adrien Delahaye to deliver the second of our Sparta Live webinars for the academic year. Adrien is a scientific member of the École Française d'Athènes and collaborator of the Amyclès research project since 2015. This project is directed by Dr. Stavros Lissos and was earlier directed by the late Professor Angelos Delivorias. Adrien is in charge of the study of the archaic and classical pottery from the project in collaboration with Dr. Christian Mazet. He is also invited researcher at the University of Freiburg in Switzerland, a former fellow of the Onassis Foundation, and former teaching and research assistant at the universities of Paris, Pantheon-Sorbonne, Rouen, and Caen in France. Adrien did his PhD in Paris and Pantheon-Sorbonne on archaeology and images of Spartan austerity, the contribution of Laconian iconography and material culture to the history of Sparta in the 6th and 5th centuries BC, under the supervision of Francis Prost and Francois Roux. Last July, he co-organised with our very own Professor Stephen Hodgkinson the panel on archaeology and Sparta for the 13th Celtic Conference in Classics at Lyon in France, which I can say was a wonderful event because I was lucky enough to attend. Adrien's talk today will focus on Beyond the Throne, the archaic finds of the Spartan sanctuary of Apollo Amyklaios. So without any further ado, Adrien, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Matt. So can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Could I share my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah, use the little button that has a square with an arrow saying share.
Yeah, but I'm not yet a presentator. It says only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
You are a presenter.
So
let me check.
Yeah, now I can.
Should be okay now? Okay, good.
Thank
you.
Okay. Just a small delay because of Mac. It's asking me to allow the program. Sorry. Okay. I have to go out and enter again, sorry.
Okay, no problem. In the meantime, while we're waiting for Adrien to come back, shall I remind our attendees that they can post their questions on the chat? And we will be holding a Q&A session after the talk. Adrien, can you hear us? Apologies for this slight delay. Adrien, can you hear us? So again, while we're waiting, let's not waste time. And I'm not sure if everyone has had the program for this semester, but next week we will be welcoming Mrs. Evi Katsara, Senior Archaeologist of the Ephorate of Antiquities for Laconia of the Greek Ministry of Culture and Sports. Evi will talk to us about Byzantine glazed tableware from Lacedaemon and its social, economic, and historical context. And Evi's talk will be co-hosted with the city of Sparta, but also with the University of Nottingham Center for Late Antique and Byzantine Studies. I should also remind you that if you're not yet a member of our center, and you should, and you wish to become one, it's free, do email us at csps@nottingham.ac.uk. Let's see now if we have Adrien back. Good.
Yes.
So I tried to keep
and now,
okay, good.
Sorry. Now I can share.
Good, excellent. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So, sorry for this. We can do as many tests as we want. In the end, it seems an update of the iOS is enough to break everything. But okay, we managed. First of all, I would like to thank you, of course, the University of Nottingham, the Center for Spartan and Peloponnesian Studies, and especially Christian Thigalou and Matt Thompson, as well as the Municipality of Sparta and Mr. Mayor Christos Doukas. It's a great pleasure for me to talk in this webinar that I've been following since the beginning during the quarantine. And I have to say that it saved some of my days during these difficult times. So today we will talk about one Spartan sanctuary, the sanctuary of Apollo Amyklaios, also known as the Amyklaion. And I want to thank all the team of the Amyklais Research Project, and especially our director, Stavros Vlizos. So what we will do today is that we will quickly have an overview about what is the Amyklaion, the ancient sources, the written sources, and we will focus quite quickly on the archaeological data, the history of research, and especially about the archaic phase of the sanctuary of Apollo Amyklaios, a phase that I'm working on with several colleagues, as we will see at the end of the presentation. So, first of all, the site. The site of the Amyklaion is on the hill of Aia Kyriaki, near the modern Amykles, at 5 kilometers southwest of the modern Sparta, and 1.2 kilometers from the modern road Sparta-Githio. And it's so on a hill in Aia Kyriaki. And from the, here is the map, quickly. And from this hill, so here is the sanctuary. From this hill, you can see basically the whole valley, the whole upper valley of the Eurotas, since it's surrounded by the mountains of Taietos, of Pannona, and you can see Sparta, the Menelayon. So basically, the hill is visible from everywhere. And it was one of the main sanctuaries of the ancient Sparta, as we know from several testimonies from ancient authors. And among them, you have this testimony from Polybius, who says that it was the most famous of all the Laconian holy places. Before going further, I have to say that very quickly that the Amyklaion is in Amykles, but Amykles is Sparta. It's one of the five comai of the ancient Sparta. So it's a bit outside of the modern Sparta, but it was during antiquity fully integrated in the civic territory of Sparta, and the inhabitants of Amykles were also Spartan citizens. So here you have a brief overview of written sources. We will see very quickly some of them during the presentation, but it's not time for us now to take too much time to study them in detail. You also have some inscriptions that you can easily find in the Inscriptiones Graecae and the SCG. So, the cult, quickly, because what are we talking about? What is the Amyklaion? So basically, to make it simple, the sanctuary of the Amyklaion is the sanctuary of Apollo Amykleos and the grave of Iakynthos. And this cultic association is quite, let's say, original. And it's very interesting because it's also combined in the, you can see it in the architecture, in the spatial organization of the sanctuary, with the naos, the so-called throne of Apollo, the thronos of Apollo, including the cult statue of Apollo, but also the grave of Iakynthos. And we have a very interesting testimony of Pausanias describing us the spatial organization, the architecture of this temple, this thronos, with the statue, the xoanon of Apollo, which was on the grave of Iakynthos, used as a base, and also in some other testimonies as an altar. As for every cult, you have a myth to explain this association, and the myth about Apollo and Iakynthos, it's quite well known. To make it simple, it's a love story between Apollo and Iakynthos. And if you want the details, you can go to see the Metamorphosis of Ovid, but you have a very brief account in Pausanias. And to make it quick, it's as often a romantic triangle between Apollo, Iakynthos, and Zephyr, the western wind. Zephyr being jealous, he blew on the disc thrown by Iakynthos, who was training with Apollo, and the disc killed Iakynthos. And this is the beginning of the cult, because Apollo, grieving, starting to establish the cult and the Iakynthia. And then you can relate it to the flower, the Iakynthia, the jacinthe in French. I don't know in English, I don't remember. But so you have a whole mythological, etiological story behind it, but we won't explore it further. Let's have a quick look to the ritual activities at the Amyklaion within the frame of this cult for Apollo and Iakynthos. So the main celebration, religious celebration of the Amyklaion are the Iakynthia. The Iakynthia were happening at the end of the spring or the beginning of the summer. It's still under discussion. But basically, you had 3 days. It's also under discussion, but it's not the time to discuss about it. And during these 3 theoretical days, you had one time for mourning the death of Iakynthos, and another time afterwards to celebrate the renewal of life through large celebrations, dances, songs, pombi, a procession, the gift of a piece of cloth, of tissue to the god, like for the Panathenaea for Athena in Athens, and also, and this is the most important thing, you had ritual sacrifices involving the whole community. And that's an essential aspect at the Amyklaion, like in many other sanctuaries. So what is the, let's say, the audience of the Iakinthia and in general of the sanctuary? We could say that the religious activities at the Amyklaion, they happened at different scales. The first of them is the scale of Amycles, the Amyklaian people. It's probably the original scale, at least during the proto-geometric and geometric period, at the scale of Amycles. And we have again an account of Pausanias talking to us about the natives worshipping the Amyklaian god. Then the Iakinthia and the Amyklaion are also integrated within a wider Spartan cultic system, and perhaps in a even wider Lacedaemonian cultic system for the whole Laconia and perhaps even beyond, including eventually the Helots and but it's more hypothetical, the Pereiki. So this multi-scale function, this multi-scale ritual activity of the Iakinthia and the Amyklaion are aimed to affirm the unity of the group or the groups at different scales. The oikos, the Spartan civic community, the different komai of Sparta, and perhaps the wider Lacedaemonian community as a whole. But that's not it, because the Amyklaion is also a sanctuary which was used to display, let's say, diplomatic treaties, treaties of peace. For example, we know, thanks to Thucydides, that at least 2 treaties of peace were displayed, the inscriptions were displayed at the Amyklaion. So because if it's displayed there, it's because it's an important sanctuary for the community, but also abroad. You have a wide audience. And we know that the audience of the Amyklaion was also towards foreigners, because we have some mentions of foreigners in Athenaeus attending the events, the celebrations. And we could even distinguish a last scale, but it's, let's say, bigger than the Amyklaion, because in fact we should talk about the other sanctuaries of Apollo Amykleos and the other celebration of the Iakinthia, and also the month of Iakinthos, because you have here a quick overview. You have attestations, you have mentions of Iakinthia and Amykleia sanctuaries elsewhere in the Mediterranean Sea, in Taranto, which is not surprising because it was a Spartan colony, also in Melos, which was a Dorian Cycladic island, Gortina in Crete, Idalion in Cyprus, and Knidos, also a theoretical Spartan colony, Miletos. So you have, let's say, wider religious networks. And one of the big questions is which part was playing the Amyklaion within this religious network. But the main point of this paper is to present to you the results of the Amyclas Results Project. So let's see that now. First, the Amyklaion was for centuries, basically since its oblivion at the end of antiquity, unknown. We were not sure about where it was located. To have more information about this, I would suggest you to read the work of Paraskevas Matalas, 2012, where you have indications about these misunderstandings and also forgeries about the location of Amycles and the Amyklaion. So based on Paraskevas Matalas, we can identify 49 travelers during 200 years who have mentioned the Amyklaion and Amycles in several locations. To make it quick, Fourmont, the Abbé Fourmont, is the first to mention Sklavouchori as the location of Amycles, then link Amycles as Aia Kyriaki, and Le Normand makes for the first time the right assumptions Amycles Sklavochori and Amyklaion Ayakeriaki, but only the first excavation of Christos Tsundas at the end of the 19th century managed to prove that the Amyklaion sanctuary was located on the hill of Ayakeriaki. So there is no need to enter the detail, but here you have a small map of Corsius, where you see that the Amyklaion is located in Sklavochori, the previous name of the modern Amycles, and the hill of Ayakeriaki was supposed to be the village, the settlement of Amycles. So it was quite hard to, when you have mentions of the Amyklaion and Amycles in in modern testimonies before the first excavations, it's quite hard to use. Especially the ones from Fourmont, the Abbé Fourmont, who is known as a forger. He made a lot of fake inscriptions, and he mentions the Amyklaion as a place where he was happy to work because he managed to destroy it until the foundations, according to his testimony, and to get a lot of inscriptions. In fact, he wasn't at the Amyklaion, and a lot of these inscriptions were forgeries. But anyway, I told you that the first excavation happened at the end of the 19th century, and they managed to prove that the Amyklaion was in Ayakeriaki. So these first excavations, they happened in 1890 under the auspices of the Archaeological Society of Athens. And Christos Tsundas managed to show that I have, where is it here? To show that it was the Amyklaion, thanks to several stem tiles mentioning the name of Apollo in Amycles. Then you had also Adolf Furtwängler and his assistant Fichter, who did several campaigns and who corrected some of the assumptions of Tsundas. I will show you later. Buchor, under the auspices of the German Institute, did the first stratigraphical excavation at the Amyklaion, stratigraphy that we can very partially use because it's not very reliable, unfortunately. And then the Amycles Research Project, led by Angelos Derivorias and Stavros Vilizos, since 2005. Here you have the different sketches, maps, topographical maps made by the different excavations. The map of Tsundas is only a sketch. It's not very reliable. And you see that, okay, here it's where is nowadays the Church of Ayakeriaki. But at the time, it was located here. I don't know if you see me when I point on the PowerPoint, if you see my pointer. But okay, anyway.
Yes, we can see.
Yes, you see? Okay, thank you, Chrysanthi. Here you have a circular construction. It was thought by Tsundas to be the foundations of the throne of Apollo. So the temple of Apollo. But then the excavation of Fichter and Furtwängler managed to show that the temple was built on the foundations of the temple were below the church of Ayakeriaki, and that this circular, round structure was in fact an altar, a circular altar. So what they did at the time is that they destroyed the church and they built it a bit further north where it is now, on the remains of a Byzantine structure, with still some spolia, some blocks, ancient blocks. So what you see now on the site is after the destruction by the team of Fichter and Furtwängler. Here you have a map of Buchor. I won't detail, but you see that these first excavations, they managed to show first the temple of Apollo, the altar, some remains on the top of the hill, and a big part of the perivolos, of the precinct wall surrounding the hill. And then you have the Amyclas Research Project with, of course, more complete map that we will detail just afterwards. Up here. Okay, here you have, it's a bit clearer. Here you have the demolition of the church. Here the German team at the south of the precinct wall. And now let's focus on the throne. I've entitled this part "The Quest of the Throne" because the history of research at the Amyclaeon is really marked by this quest. The scholars, they came at the Amyclaeon first of all to find the Thronos, because the throne is known through several written sources depicting a very original structure built by an Ionian architect called Bathicles from Magnesia, and the point was to find the throne. But as you have seen, perhaps for some of you in Sparta, there are very few remains in situ. So this is a 3D model, a photogrammetry of the site. These are the in situ remains. Only this part of the crepice, of the foundations. Here and there you have other remains, but they are not really in situ. So before the first excavations, you had already attempts to reconstruct the throne, but only based on the description of Pausanias. So basically, to make it simple, it's Xoanon, so an archaic kind of statue, holding a bow, a spear, and surrounding or sitting on a throne, so basically a chair. But this is based on no archaeological data. The same again with the rule. Furtwängler also, before his excavations at the Amyclaeon, and then after the work of Tsundas and Fichter, we have the first proper depiction, thanks to the collection, thanks to the excavation. They found architectural remains, like this very famous Ionical / Doric capital, which is exhibited with others at the Archaeological Museum of Sparta, and it's also our logo. So it's an iconic member of the throne. So this is a depiction of Fichter. And this depiction is based on some archaeological data. It's not perfect, of course, but reliable for some parts of it. Bouchard and Vormasso have proposed another view. Roland Martin in the 70s proposed a new version, which is based still on the proposal of Fichter. Then Bruckner proposed a new, let's say, a chair's version, which is very far from the archaeological data. And then we arrive at the work of the Amyclas Research Project and its new proposals. The project started in 2005, and the original goal was to find remains of the throne, and in situ, of course, but also around the site, because within a radius of 60 kilometers, you can find parts of the throne of Apollo, in churches, in old houses, storages, gardens, as it is here, and also in Ayakeriaki, in the modern Ayakeriaki. So some of these blocks have been removed. Some others have been measured, cast, and now we have a bigger, let's say, database to do the puzzle, to fill the blanks. So proper recording of the in situ crepice of the throne was made, and a platform was made on the site, on the hill, to reconstruct what could be reconstructed from the available parts of the throne. So, based on the proposals of Fichter and Martin, the teams of architects of Manolis Kores, Themis Bilis, and Maria Magnisali have identified several parts which could fit with the original proposal, and they have made other proposals that you will see just afterwards. Nowadays on the site you have a partial, and I still see a partial reconstruction of the very secured proposals of the architects. This is from the inside, but here towards south, let's say that from this picture you are within the foundations, but on the other side you could enter from this side, as you will see on the maps. Here it is. So here you have a plan from above and a cut section with the cult statue. So this is the proposal of Themis Bilis, Maria Magnisali, and Manolis Kores. And for, let's say, the documentation is far more, the architectural base of this proposal is far more solid than what was proposed before. And they managed to integrate all the architectural elements on the site, including also parts of the cult statue. We don't have anymore the cult statue of Apollo, but we have depictions on coins and also on one inscribed relief, which is conserved at the Archaeological Museum of Sparta. And we also have a part of the base of the statue where the wooden statue was plugged, literally, in this hole. So Manolis Kores proposed this reconstruction of the cult statue with the grave of Iachinthos under it, and it fits with the archaeological data, and it fits with the written testimonies, as far and also with the coins, as far as we can go. So here you have all combined proposal. The shape of the statue is based only on the coins, so don't take it as a proper realistic reconstruction. It's only based on the coins. We have no way to go further in accuracy at the time. And it's golden because we have a testimony of the statue of Apollo Amycleus covered with the gold sent by the king of Lydia, Croesus. So here you have an example of I will not find the word, of the actual archaeological data, the actual architectural members conserved, stored in the museum and in the storages of the F48, where the architects have tried to make them fitting with the general plan. Also including this lion path, paw. But the goal is to go, as I said, beyond the throne. Because now the throne, as you've seen, is well documented. The throne is about to be published in the forthcoming series of the Amyclaeon's excavations. And we have much more data than expected. And we are able now to say something new, and not only about the Thronos. For example, so this is the chronological phasing of the site thanks to the Amyclos Research Project. I won't enter the detail, but you see that you have 6 Amyclaeon phases and 1 Amyclae. Why Amyclae and Amyclaeon? Because Amyclae is settlement, Amyclaeon is sanctuary. So at the origin, it seems that we had the Proto-Helladic, early Helladic settlement, and that then it developed in a sanctuary. And today we will focus on the phases 3 and 4. Amyclaeon 3 and 4, so the archaic Amyclaeon, and it corresponds also to the monumentalization phases of the sanctuary. You will see what I mean a bit afterwards. So I was saying that we don't have only the throne anymore. So here you have a 3D model of the site with a proposed location of the thronos. And in front of it, you see that we have a reconstructed circular altar. This altar, the shape of it has been proposed already by Fichter in 1980. And there is nothing new, let's say, but the architects managed to propose a more accurate proposal, which allowed us to do a partial anastillos, a partial reconstruction on the site, thanks to the blocks remaining on the site. It's easier to reconstruct a circular building like this one than a rectangular altar, because if you have degrees, then it's only about circles. So just one or two pieces of it, and you can easily identify the elevation. Then we managed also to identify the propylea, the monumental entrance of the archaic period. So it's not the propylea of the Acropolis of Athens, but still we have parallels, like the entrance of Eria in Naxos. It's heavily not damaged, but disturbed by later phases during late antiquity, but still we can identify it. Thanks to this entrance, we could also connect, thanks to the work of the late Yannis Pikoulas and Eleni Kourinou, we could connect the entrance of the Amyclaeon with the few remains of ancient roads connecting the Amyclaeon to Sparta. So here in orange, you have a proposal of this ancient road. And this road could have been used for the Pompeii, for the procession from Sparta to the sanctuary. And also it's mentioned as the road where were located the buildings for the Syssitia, the common public mills for Spartan citizens. So I was telling you that we would focus on Amyclaeon 3 and 4. Sorry, I've put 2, it should be 3. These two monumental phases happened during the early archaic period, at the beginning of the 7th, and at the end of the 6th century BC. And it's mainly a matter of precinct walls, of perivolos. Here you have in red the plan of the first perivolos, the first precinct wall, at the beginning of the 7th century BC. It's not only a precinct wall, it's also retaining wall for an upper platform. It will be even it will be even clearer during the following slides. Here is the second phase of the perivolos. So you see the evolution. You have an addition of an entrance, the monumental entrance, a western perivolos, and also here a modification of the extent towards south. So you have a connection between these two parts and an extension towards south to build a bigger platform. And you can see here on the left a proposal of the extent and the height of the archaic platform. The architects have calculated that it should have reached the height of 7 meters. So you see, it's not only to surround the hill, it's to make the hill a big, gigantic platform on which they built the temple, the throne, around the original cult statue, and then the vomos, the altar, just in front of it. So for what is on the top of the hill, that's basically it for the archaic period. We have other phases, later antiquity buildings. I won't detail it, it's not the point of this paper today. And now we'll go outside the precinct walls towards south in two specific areas. First, the archaic south building. So this is very recent work, and there we found a lot of archaic material. And that's very interesting because I've not mentioned it until now, but the archaic phase of the Amyclaeon was basically unknown, or let's say very badly documented. And thanks to the work of the 5 past years, we managed to find a lot of new data for this archaic phase. So here is what we've called the archaic south building. You have the location on the right, and so here's some aerial pictures, and here it is, a sketch of its dimension. And one of the ideas is that it could have been a stoa, because we found here the remains of a potential wooden column, so a stone base for a wooden column. So the back here of the building would have been directly next to the hill. Here it's heavily carved within the bedrock. We have this space here of potential circulation, which is still under discussion. But in front of it, you have an open, a 3 walls building open towards south. And it raises the question of towards what it was open. So this stoa is open towards south, so it opens the question of what is on the southern slope of the Amyclaeon. In this building, I told you that we had found very interesting things. First of all, this bronze gryphon, which was on a large cauldron, like the late geometric and early archaic large cauldron. It's in a full bronze. And it's interesting because we know, thanks to Pausanias, about bronze cauldrons at the Amyclaeon. It doesn't mean that this gryphon is from one of the tripods mentioned by Pausanias, but at least it's the second artifacts of this kind that we find at the Amyclaeon, the other being in the museum. And it was in a destruction layer at the north of the building. And also very interesting find is this black glazed late 6th, early 5th century cup was found in the corner of this carving here, and it could have been potentially foundation deposit, which could allow us to date this building of the end of the 6th or very beginning of the 5th century BC. So it's only one vase, it's quite damaged, but still. And here an overview of what we found there for the archaic material. So you see a lot of miniature Laconian arivali. Some of them have, let's say, the size and the volume inside to allow a product inside, let's say. Some others don't. So we are studying this material currently. But these scarce artifacts are nothing compared to what I will show you later. So here, again, some arivali here and there, miniature, but we have also other shapes like like an eye, very Laconian, specific Laconian shape, drinking cups originally, but these ones are very small, very miniature. So it raises the question of the ritual practices. And again, did they drink within these vases? Did they use them to do some libations? Or was it purely symbolic? We're working on this hypothesis. And we have a lot of black glazed drinking shapes. you would tell me perhaps it's not very impressive, but we didn't have a lot of black glazed ware on the hill. Now we have some on the surroundings, and they are drinking shapes. Drinking shapes mean common meals. Drinking shapes mean banquets. So we can relate it potentially to the Iakinthia. So we are right now during the material study of this pottery, really looking to the typology of the shapes. Some decorated vases also, black figured Laconian wares. Some later vases. Here it's Kothon, a small mug used in Laconia from the middle of the 6th century BC towards the 5th century BC. Some imports, but very few imports. That's characteristic at the Amyklaion and in general in Laconia. Very few imports. Here some Attic wares. And that's very interesting, some architectural terracottas, potentially dated before the throne of Apollo. So it's an indication of monumental buildings. Doesn't mean that it's a necessary temple, but we had other archaic monumental buildings. And here I've taken a sample, a small part of it. And if you compare with one example, which is from the sanctuary of Artemis Orthia, exhibited in the Archaeological Museum of Sparta, and another one from the Heraion of Olympia, you see that this is this part of what we call disco-acroterion. So it's an architectural terracotta, and you see the shape here. It was to display on the top of the roof. So it's not for everyday use. It's not for classic individual habitation. It's for potentially monumental building. So we have new indications about the monumentalization of the site during the archaic period. And this is the last part. I don't want to exhaust you. Still on the southern side of the hill, but a bit towards east, we have this yellow area just in front of the archaic precinct wall, which has been a part of it was discovered by Bushor in 1987, sorry. And a part of it at the beginning of the Amicus Research project, but the main part, all this part, was excavated during the 2-3 last years. And what we found there is very, very promising for the future, because we found a stratigraphy of the archaic layers, and potentially a stratigraphy of the monumentalization, which was lacking from Bushor excavation. So here, what you have on so you are at the south here. Here is the archaic perivolos, and let's say that the line is like this. And just in front of the perivolos of the wall, of the precinct wall, we have these layers, and the deepest layer here, which was built on directly on the bedrock, was made to make the area flat, and in it we found a lot of material until this date, 700 BC. So this is the first monumentalization phase. So this could be linked. This could give us a datation based on stratigraphy to link it with the statue of Apollo. Then above it, we have this layer, the layer 3 here, which is dated from 700 towards 500 BC. In this layer, we found really a lot of archaic material, lead figurine votives, ivory elements, terracotta figurines, decorated vases, and thousands of miniature vases. So that's what I was talking about before. here, compared to the southern building, here the volumes of material are much bigger. We also found a concentration, not to say a deposit because it's a bit disturbed, a deposition of bronze elements, a lot of bronze elements, including pieces of helmets, bronze helmets from the Archaic period, Corinthian, Illyrian, and here some obeloi, so to say some ancient souvles, some ancient, I don't remember the name in English now, but for grill, for barbecue. So it's interesting for several matters. If you have an obeloi, you can, during the Archaic period, it can indicate common meals after sacrifices with consumption of meat, but also eventually it could be also considered as a reserve of value, like money. We have attestations in Argos, for example, but it's another matter. Some decorated bronze sheets under study and recently restored. So here you have an overview. Some jewelry, some arrowheads, hook, furniture, bracelets, and eyelashes, bronze eyelashes, which indicate human-sized statues. It's just a small piece of a statue, but it's enough to issue the hypothesis of a large-sized statue. Ivory plaques, also eventually for wooden furnitures, or ex voto for the sanctuary. Bronze pins. Here you have dice, ivory dice. A lot of new lead crowns, like in the sanctuary of Artemis Orthia. Here more ivories and carved bones. Here a horse, ivory horse, eventually used as a furniture as a decoration for furniture. Terracotta figurines. Here grotesque type that you can find also in Tsakona. Molded figurines. Here you have an owl. And also pieces of architectural terracottas. So a very large and rich deposit with a lot of different categories of material, including also decorated vases again, black figured vases, which is very interesting for Sparta, because we say a lot, perhaps too much, that you have no figured pottery in Sparta, but I believe that we have. And we don't have a lot, but we have. Here some Laconian Arivali, and this is Corinthian, so it's not Laconian, but still it's interesting because we have indications of imports, and this is well dated also. Here an overview of 1 year collection of miniatures. I think it was in 2018 or 19. So with thousands of them. Again, now we are more or less around 5,000 individuals artifacts. So individuals, I mean not fragments, but identified minimum number of objects. So that's a minimum, and it's still under quantification. And because I've been already too long, I will end with these fragments. Studied by Stavros Vlizos. They are fragments of molds, of casting for big statues, bronze statues. So here it's the terracotta mold, and you can identify, you can see, you will have to trust me, but you can see pieces of the clothing on the inside in the negative of the mold. And you have also some remains of the casting, the bronze casting, on some fragments. And these pieces were thrown as waste here and there on the southern side. And that's very interesting for two reasons. Because first, it indicates that this side, at least a layer here, was the result of cleaning of the upper side of the hill, very probably. And this waste, these artifacts were used to fill a gap, perhaps to prepare an upper circulation, occupation layer above it that we don't have anymore. And the second conclusion is that we had temporary metal workshops on the hill. We had found already here in the orange part some remains of late geometric metallurgic activities, and these fragments on the southern side indicates they indicate that we also had at least another phase of bronze casting on the site, and we have the remains there. And perhaps one of the pits on the upper side of the hill were used also for that. It's well documented in Olympia, for example, and here you have a proposal, an illustration to understand this phenomenon. So to conclude about the archaic phase of the Amyclaeon, you can see that some very decisive progress have been made for the understanding of the Thronos, of the Apollo's temple, but not only. Our understanding of the sanctuary now is much wider than the Thronos itself. We understand the spatial organization of the site, the precinct walls, the altar, and also the surrounding buildings. And from now on, we can hope to expand the research toward the surroundings of the sanctuary. And for the archaic phase only, let's say, to be brief, that now we have an archaic phase at the Amyclaeon, and it's normal, I would say, that we didn't have it on the top of the hill because the main monumentalization phase, when they built the terrace, was during the archaic period. So whatever happened afterwards was washed away from the top, and we can find it in the surroundings. So now we have to publish all that, and then we have to expand. So thank you very much. And I would like also to thank all the team. You have some brief pictures here of the team at work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adrien, for this fascinating presentation of the Amyclaeon and also of the finds. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a lot of questions. So I have a lot of questions to ask you, but I will first of all like to welcome the mayor of Sparta, Mr. Petros Doukas, who has managed to join us. I know, I'm sure Matt has also a lot of questions in terms of monumentalization. But for now, I think we're going to start having a lot of questions. I can see also that Professor Palagia has also already raised her hand. So if you don't mind, Petros and Matt, I would like to give Professor Palagia the floor to ask her first question. Let me see now if I can unmute. Okay, I'll make her presenter. And Olga, if you unmute, you should be able to ask the question.
Oh, thank you, Chrysanthi. I have unmuted it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Adrien, for this wonderful presentation. Many things were new to me. I hadn't seen them before. And I, as you know, I have contributed already to the final publication volume, a chapter on the sculptures that were excavated by the Germans in the beginning of the century. And I have two questions for you. First question, why do you call the throne a temple? I'm not sure that this word really applies, because what we really have here is a colonnade, not really a temple. And the other question is, Pausanias says that the Spartans gilded the face of Apollo. There is no indication that the whole statue was gilded. So I would like to ask why the reconstruction shows the whole statue as golden.
Καλησπέρα σας, κύριε Παλάγια. Thank you very much for your questions. So, yeah, first of all, for the temple question, yeah, you are right. It's the whole question of what is the Thronos. I've said the temple, I've said the naos, but I mean for didactic reasons. But of course, the Thronos, it's more of a colonnade, it's more of a surrounding to a cult statue. But then it depends of the definition of what is a temple. Is it basically the agalma, the cult statue, and whatever is around? In any case, the Thronos is a unique architecture that's why it's fascinating. That's why that many architects are getting crazy about it. But yeah, you're right. I should talk only about the Thronos, in fact. And for the second question about the cult statue, yes. As I said, the proposal of the golden statue, it's just, it's not for publication. It's not finalized version. Sorry, I got lost in my mind. Yeah, it's only based on the coins depictions only, and on the testimony of Pausanias. But this is, let's say, this is a working document for now that is made only since some month, that we are starting to use it, but yeah, it's still under discussion. But you're right. Basically, we don't know that much about the statue, and even the gold on the cult statue of Apollo. The evidence is very scarce. So that's why you've seen some slides have golden cult statues, some don't, some have just trunk. So it's yeah, just working documents for now.
Well, thank you very much. But Pausanias says specifically only the face was gold. So I think we should bear that in mind. But thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Shall I now pass on the floor to Petros to ask, to say if he has any questions?
Yes. Very briefly, first of all, Adrien, many thanks. We're grateful to you for this great presentation and the great research, and to Chrysanthi as well and the University of Nottingham, because what you have been doing about the Spartan civilization in general is not just good for Sparta, and we're grateful for you, but it's for the world heritage and civilization. It has a much wider impact than the Sparta and its history. The question I would like to ask Adrien is that it seems that there was a direct connectivity between the Mycenaean Achaean civilization and the Spartan Dorian civilization. It seems from what I see that the Spartans accepted what they inherited from the Mycenaean culture, Amycleus Apollon, monuments to Menelaus and Helen. Iakinthia also was a Achaean kind of story. And maybe the Spartans incorporated the Mycenaean Achaean aristocracy into their culture. Is there a direct connection, or was there an abrupt change between the older Mycenaean civilization with Helen of Troy, of Sparta, and Menelaus and Amycleus Apollon, and then the conquerors, which were the Dorian Spartans, who were uncultured nomads at the beginning, but then seemed to voraciously accept civilization and culture?
Thank you for your question. Okay, first of all, thank you for your congratulations, but they go first to Angelos Derivorias and Stavros Vlizos. Then for the Mycenaean, let's say, connection, the Mycenaean heritage, the Amyklaion is often seen as a key site in Laconia to understand the continuity or the transition between Mycenaean times and historical times, let's say. But it's not that easy. We have a Mycenaean phase, which is, let's say, quite evanescent, because we have material, we have artifacts, but we don't have proper stratigraphy, and we don't have also remain structures, because it was an open air sanctuary. Then there is a big question about the gap between this phase and the proto-geometric phase, a question raised by many and answered during the last years by Vicky Vlahu. There is a possibility of a continuity based on the ceramological, on the pottery sequence, but it's not. Let's say that it's not easy. You have some features that can connect the Amyklaion to the Mycenaean times, but is there continuity or discontinuity? That's another story. And about and I think that the Amyklaion for now is not perhaps the best site to answer to these questions. The Mycenaean Laconia is emerging here and there for years now, in Aios Vasilios especially, and we have some pieces of the puzzle, but we cannot answer yet. But for sure, there is or a continuity or there is a reuse of some Mycenaean sites. What is it exactly? I cannot say. There are more specialized researchers than me, and it's a very tough question. And about the Dorians, that's the whole Dorian question. That's also a very tricky matter, because if we acknowledge the continuity because the Mycenaean and the Spartans, then what to do with the Dorians? But in general, the Dorians, archaeologically, we cannot say much. There is no Dorian material culture, so Dorians for now is a cultural construction. You can identify yourself as a Dorian, but in terms of archaeology, me at least, I don't know what is Dorian. That's a question that I ask myself all the time when I work on the connections between Sparta, Laconia, Crete, and Western Greece. But for now, the Dorian questions, we cannot answer it only with the archaeology, unfortunately. But thank you. Very interesting questions.
Thank you very much, Adrien. This actually takes us to a question that Dr. Florentia Fragopoulou is asking in the chat. She says, regarding layer sigma 4, does it provide enough evidence to support the continuation of activity from 2200, from the early Bronze Age, to 700 BC?
No, thank you, Florentia, for your question. No, it's not enough. Layer, I mean, the chronological range of layer is never enough to assess the continuity. You can put a beginning, you can put an end, but it doesn't mean that you don't have gaps in between. So continuity is always a tricky question, and it's always a question of continuity of what? Continuity of occupation, of ritual activities. A site can be abandoned, the site can be reused partially, but no, just on this layer we cannot answer the question of continuity. No, but these layers, the answer, we can use them to date the two monumentalization phases, and we can use them to establish a chronological sequence for the pottery. But since this layer, the layer 4, was established at the beginning of the 7th century BC, it doesn't give us a reliable chronological sequence for the earlier phases.
Good, thank you. The next question comes from one of our MA students, Jodie McCall. She has two questions actually, so I'll ask the first one. How many grotesque statuettes were located at the sanctuary and of what types?
Thank you for a question.
Want to answer that? Yeah, because the other one's different.
We've published an article about it recently, 1 month ago, with Aphrodite Vla, who is also in the team. This is a very specific type of Laconian archaic artifacts, hand-modeled terracotta figurines with grotesque types, basically with some riders, but a lot of ichthyphalic figurines, male ichthyphalic figurines, and some feminine versions also. The one I show is a feminine version, and for now we don't have a lot of the Amyclaeon. We have 4 or 5. That's it. That's it. In the recent material of the excavation, a new examination of the old excavation material would perhaps give us new items. But for now, that's it. It's nothing comparable in volume to what was found in Tsakona, where you have thousands of them.
I believe we have some from Artemis Orthia as well, don't we?
Yes, Artemis Orthia, the Menelaion, the Acropolis.
Yes, yeah, good.
Yes.
That's very interesting. So the Jodie's next question is, what are your theories on the place of miniature terracotta pottery in relation to the cultic practices taking place through the cult's existence and its place within the wider Spartan network of cults?
That's a very interesting question that we are asking ourselves lately. This amount of miniature vases, the overrepresentation of the arribal shape, the various range of the typology of the size of the decoration of the internal volumes, there is a lot of questions because can it be linked to ritual activity on the basis of written sources about the Akinthia? Not directly. Then it's a sanctuary of Apollo, it's a sanctuary about renewal of the vegetation, of the civic community, with the involvement of the youth, especially the young men. So Apollo plus young men plus arribal, it's very tempting to link it to this sphere of the athletics, of the gymnasium. So we are asking ourselves this question. We are trying to stay to remain careful, but yeah, perhaps there is a link, but not directly to the Akinthia on the basis of written sources. We have to find other I will find it hermeneutical, other interpretative frames to understand these objects. But some are, in theory, usable. Some are not, but they all exist. They all appear in the same layers. Some are burnt, some are not. Some are well fired in the kiln. Some are not. They appear with bones from some fired bones from ritual activities, from Thessia, bloody sacrifices. So there is a ritual hypothesis, interpretation, a ritual use. How exactly? Is it only symbolic? Is it only for libations, or were they used in another way? We are trying to find out.
Thank you. One of our visiting PhD students, Gabriel Bernardo, you know him, Adrien, is asking, having in mind the mirage of Spartan austerity, is it possible to see any major change in the type of objects found before and after the archaic monumentalization of the sanctuary?
Thank you, Gabriel. Yeah, that's what I was trying to deal with in my PhD. No, The Spartan austerity is you cannot prove it on an archaeological base. You have a gap in Laconia, like in many other places in the Aegean. You have a gap at the end of the 6th century BC for the pottery, and there are several reasons for that. The first is that the local productions, they collapse or they have difficulties, the fine wares, they have difficulties here and there because they are, let's say, they suffer from the Attic competition. The other reason also is that the typology of the pottery and of the artifacts in these periods is not very well established, at least after the mid-5th century BC for Laconia. Perhaps you have a longer use of earlier forms, and we see a gap where there is no gap, in fact. And another cause is the stratigraphy, because we talked about monumentalization today, two main monumentalization phases at the Amyclaeon, but you have also at the same time monumentalization at the Menelaon, on the Acropolis, in Orthia in a way. So when you monumentalize, you make retaining walls, you make platforms, you trap pottery from earlier periods in the fillings, and whatever is above it is washed away. So that could be an explanation for a partial explanation for some gaps in monumentalized sites in Laconia. That's one of my ideas, but otherwise, no, there is no austerity that can be proven on an archaeological base. And on the contrary, we have that was an explanation, an hypothesis before for the Amyclaeon and also in other places in Sparta. But now at the Amyclaeon, we have these very rich archaic deposits around the precinct wall. So it doesn't work anymore.
Thank you very much, Adrien. Professor Gina Salapata is saying that it's very interesting new material. Just a question on the reconstruction of the throne. Doesn't throne, as a term, imply armrests? The new reconstruction does not really look much like a throne.
Yeah, exactly. But the throne, the term of throne is it can abuse us. It can look like a throne. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily a chair. And in terms of architectural remains, there is no indication at all for this. So the architects, they used what they had, and we don't need armrest. But that's a very good question and difficult question, because that's the whole point of the quest of the throne, because it's unique. We have no parallel except looking at the chairs on terracotta relief, as you have. So yeah, perhaps, but we have absolutely no indications of architectural remains. So they didn't go into armrest for this reason. No evidence at all.
Thank you very much. So the last question from the chat is by Dr. Luke Madsen, and he's asking, has anyone in scholarship discussed or addressed weathering or exposure and the cult statue? For example, Apollo was presented with a cloak annually. That's what we hear from Pausanias. Are we to imagine this cloak to just sit out on Apollo in the rain, snow, wind, year round?
That's a good question. Yeah, we have mentioned in Pausanias of a cloak, of a chiton given by the Leucipides annually to the god, to the statue of the god. Then what they've done with the cloak, I don't know. I don't think that it has been addressed really properly. And that, yeah, that would be an interesting way, an interesting research, comparative research with the other sanctuaries to see what to do with this cloak, because if it's a Ipethro, an open air sanctuary as it's considered, yeah, what happened with the cloak? But then is it a cloak? Yeah, we don't have much details. We just know that they were giving a cloak to the statue of the god. So, but yeah, that's a good question to explore. And I know that you know about clothes, so feel free to do so, Luke.
Great, thank you, Adrien. I will now pass on to Matt, because I'm sure he can ask the last question, because we are around 6:30. So Matt, do you have a question?
I could ask Adrien 100 questions, because this is a really exciting site that I absolutely love. But I think what the one I would like to ask is, with these kind of two periods of monumentalization that we get, is there any evidence that the material was kind of augmented, and that there were parts of the throne that are older and sort of a bigger structure is built around, or does it look like it's a new construction in new periods of new buildings in the 6th century?
Yes, what we know the big difference between the first and the second monumentalization phase, it's the precinct wall, the perivolos, because it's the condition to build the platform. It's basically a retaining wall, as we said. So they extend during the second phase the platform to build, it seems, the throne. So the question is, did we have something around the cult statue before? And also, was exactly the cult statue at the exact same place? Probably, but we don't really know. We don't have architectural remains or any indications of an earlier structure around the throne. But these architectural terracottas that we found, they seem to indicate monumental buildings. Were they around the throne? I don't know. It means that you need a roof to put them on place. So I'm not sure that they are directly linked to the cult statue. So, but that's an open question. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think this concludes the questions, and I would like to invite Mayor Doukas to do the closing remarks, and then I will close the webinar.
You know, one of my recommendations to the government is to spend some money trying to reconstruct some of the greatest statues and monuments, and adorn Greece and Sparta and Athens with some of these. I have not had much success yet, but you know, maybe reconstructing the temple and statue of Apollo with the scant information we had, but in a not too monumental but sizable size, that would be something that would attract attention to history and archaeology and would excite people. It's an investment in uplifting the spirit of the people. We haven't done that. At any case, Adrien, again, many thanks for your outstanding work and very comprehensive work. You've seen everything from many, many points. On your further research, keep an eye on this connectivity between the Dorian and the Achaean civilizations, because it seemed to me that the Spartans, even though the Dorians were a bit more nomadic, primitive at the beginning, were capable of absorbing a lot from the earlier cultures, minus those who resisted and became helots, and that's a different spot in history. But it seems that they wanted somehow to emulate Agamemnon. Agamemnon was an almost godlike figure, the head of the Greeks in Troy. So they may have tried to keep this royal connectivity and benefit themselves. So this is something for your future research to keep an eye on. Again, many, many thanks. Outstanding presentation. And Chrysanthi, you are an asset to Sparta. Thank you, and to Nottingham for what you have been doing. and we can try to codify at some point when you get some time, because I know you work 24/7, to codify all these outstanding presentations and research that we had so far, and make it accessible to a much wider public. So again, Adrien and Chrysanthi, many thanks. We're grateful to what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Mayor Doukas. It remains for me to thank and congratulate Adrien for a very informative paper. It's an exciting project, and of course we should extend our warmest congratulations to Dr. Stavros Vlizos and to the Amicles Research Project team for the excellent research that you are producing. Believe me, we could dedicate an entire Sparta Live series just on your project, and we would be very happy to have more of the researchers. I know Stavros was very busy this year, but we'll definitely have him in one of the forthcoming series. But we would be delighted to also welcome other members of the team. I'm delighted also that Aphrodite Vlahu, who is coming from Vatica, who is my second home, let's say, is part of your team, so very proud. So on behalf of the Center, I would like also to warmly thank Mayor Doukas and the City Council of Sparta for their unfailing support since May 2020, when we first started this series. Many thanks are owed to the University of Nottingham and the amazing marketing team of the School of Humanities, and to Mr. Petros Karpenarakos and the Vachos, Radio News for media sponsorship. We are live streaming this year. Above all, I would like to thank all of our attendees, and we very much hope that you will be joining us again next week. That is Thursday, the 3rd of November, again 5 p.m. In the UK, 7 p.m. in Greece, and equivalent hours all around the world, as we will be welcoming Mrs. Evi Katsara, Senior Archaeologist of the Ephorate of Antiquities for Laconia of the Greek Ministry of Culture and Sports. Evi will talk to us about Byzantine glazed tableware from Lacedaemon and its social, economic, and historical context. Evi's talk will be co-hosted, of course, with the city of Sparta, but also with the University of Nottingham Center for Late Antique and Byzantine Studies. Before we close, I would also like, because we heard so much about austerity, monumentalization, and luxury today, I would also like to draw your attention to, let me see if I can share, to our new publication. It started, it appeared today. Let's see if I can put that on there. I'm not sure if you can see, that's our new volume, Luxury and Wealth in Sparta and the Peloponnese, edited by our own Professor Stephen Hodkinson and me. It appeared through the very famous for us, the study of ancient Sparta, Classical Press of Wales, and we would like to extend our warmest thanks to Dr. Ioanna Crowley for seeing this publication going through. So if you're not yet a member of our center and you wish to become one, it's free after all. Do email us at csps@nottingham.ac.uk. Thank you for staying with us and have a very nice evening. Goodbye.